Check it out, eh? Red Stripe, Jamaican beer. Goin, eh? Fuggin. I was always skeptical of people who were Pond of Gully, Movado. What are you, out of your mind? How could you not be Pond of Gaza and be with Vibes Cartel, eh? Who's in prison? You want to know who the real deal is? Who's in prison? Vibes. We're Pond of Gaza. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about, eh? I'm watching fucking Drunk History the other night. Great show, eh? And it's people that are wasted, hammering back whatever is their poison. That's not bad. And they're talking about history. And it's funny because it'll be a drunk person talking, right? And then the actors will be using his or her voice, and they'll sound wasted. And ha ha ha, isn't it funny to see someone in history being all drunk and shit, right? Here's the funny thing though. History is taught by history teachers in school mostly, right? And nerds. And they left out a pretty major detail, something we can't really check on, like smell. Like when people talk about old New York, they don't realize that there was 4 feet of manure, it reeked. That's not in the history books so much, right? Here's what's left out of the history books also, and it's a biggie. They were drunk. Everyone in history was totally plastered. And so when you're watching that show, it's not an exaggeration. People were steamed, man. Totally blotto. Like Johnny Appleseed. You know Johnny Appleseed? Disney's got a cute little cartoon about him going around planting apple trees, and everyone goes, thanks for the apple. They're so sweet and delicious. I think I'll make an apple pie. No, that's not the case at all. What was going on with him is he'd go on the outskirts of settlements, right? Like say, like hipsters do, like gentrification. So if people were in West Virginia and they were headed west, he'd go like 5 miles west, plant a bunch of apple trees, and then when people were commuting, like when they were moving, they'd go, how is it over there? And they'd go, oh, Johnny Appleseed has tons of apples. Oh, I'll check it out. You know why? Apple cider. People weren't going to go somewhere unless they could get shit hammered. So apple cider determined whether you'd go there or not, so there'd be enough booze. Apples tasted disgusting back then. They only got sweet like 1 generation ago. They used to just taste like potatoes. People didn't put them in pies. They didn't eat them. They didn't think they were yummy. They used them for booze. And I noticed this the other day. I was actually with Derek Waters, and we're at some old bar, and they got some pictures of old dudes. You ever notice when you see old pictures of people, they're all fucking cross-eyed? You know why that is? Fist fights, because they were wasted. I got in a fist fight once, and the doctor goes, we got to send you to an optometrist. I think you separated your cornea. And I thought, that's what happens with all those old dudes. They then, don't worry about it, eh? I'll just be cross-eyed in all my old photos, because everyone else is, because it's totally normal to look like you're going blind, eh? And the more you look into this, the more you realize how wasted everything is, or everyone was. Like, I'm learning about James Roebling, right? Or John Roebling, the guy that built the Brooklyn Bridge. And back before they had machines that made ropes, you'd just be 150 feet from each other and you'd just be twisting them around like that. It was a total pain in the ass. It took all day. It was hell. And everyone did it. In fact, if you didn't make rope sometimes as a volunteer, people thought you were shitty. So anyway, I'm reading about how they would do it, right? And his wife or something is like, yeah, so they get up at 6 and we sit them 150 feet apart, and then I bring them out whiskey at 7 a.m. I like to never go before noon, but back then, 7 a.m.'s no problem, eh? And they go, and then I'd give them some bread, and then at noon we'd come back with some more whiskey, and then after we're done the ropes, we'd come back and have like whatever they ate back then, potatoes and beets, and more whiskey. You've been drinking whiskey since 7 a.m.? Dude, tomorrow's going to be a nightmare. I hope you got a box set of The Sopranos ready, because you're not getting out of bed, pal. And look at the size of the whiskey jugs back then. Now you feel like a maniac if you got a big bottle of Makers. They had jugs this big with the little cork on top. They were fucking huge, eh? And then, you know, if you go to House on the Rock in Madison, they have all these old little dioramas. Half of them are of a guy that drank himself to death. That was just part of the thing. Like you do a diorama of a nice guy in the potty, like in an outhouse. You have a diorama of a bear, and you have a diorama of a dead drunk. That happened all the time. Winos were everywhere. In fact, doctors preferred treating, we're sick of treating winos because they were so belligerent. They go, get me some of these heroin addicts. I'm sick of these guys. You know the Knights of Columbus, right? I'm a Knight of Columbus, right? You know how that started? Today it's the biggest insurance company in the world. But it started out, Father Jim McGreevy goes, I got to get some money for these widows. Their husbands keep getting drunk and picking fights with the police, eh? And then the police end up having to kill them. So we got all these widows running around because their drunk husbands are fighting to death. Look, I think I got them all there, eh? But we have this funny tendency to sanitize information and make it all crispy, clean Disney cartoon. And it's not the way it was. It sucked back then. You were starving. You had to dig up grandma because you're starving to death in the freezing cold. Booze was the only thing that got us through. Drunk history isn't a funny, kooky way of looking at history. History is drunk.